What happens when a democracy chooses to sacrifice its freedom for stability? When the very institutions designed to protect liberty become the tools of tyranny? This is the story of Rome, a story that began with a republic founded on principles of representation and ended with an emperor ruling absolutely. But how did this transformation happen? Was it the ambition of one man, the violence of many, or something deeper, something inherent in the nature of power itself? Today, we journey back to ancient Rome to trace how Julius Caesar, civil wars, and Augustus Caesar transformed a republic into an empire. This isn't just history, it's a cautionary tale about the fragility of democracy and the seductive allure of authoritarianism. So, buckle up. We're about to explore how Rome lost its democracy. Imagine a world where citizens had a voice, where power wasn't held by one person, but by elected representatives. That was the Roman Republic. For centuries, Rome was ruled by a system of government known as a res publica, the thing that belongs to the people. It wasn't a perfect democracy by modern standards, but it was revolutionary for its time. The Republic had a complex structure. The Senate, composed of elders and elites, advised on laws and policies. The assemblies, where citizens could vote on laws and elect officials. The tribunes, who represented the common people and could veto decisions. This system was designed to prevent any one person from gaining too much power. But beneath the surface, tensions simmered. The patricians and plebeians were often at odds. Wealth inequality grew, and then the cracks began to show. The first major crack appeared with the Gracchi brothers. Tiberius and Gaius Gracchus were reformers who tried to redistribute land to the poor, but the elites saw them as threats. Tiberius was murdered by a mob of senators, a stark warning that the Republic's institutions could be weaponized against change. Then came the Marian-Sullan civil wars. Gaius Marius, a general who opened the army to the poor, and Lucius Cornelius Sulla, a champion of the elites, turned their rivalry into a bloody conflict. Sulla did the unthinkable. He marched his army on Rome itself twice. He declared himself dictator and executed thousands of his enemies. This was the first time a Roman general had used his troops to seize power, and it set a dangerous precedent. The Republic was no longer a system of laws. It was a system of might makes right. Enter Julius Caesar, a man of immense ambition, charisma, and audacity. Caesar conquered Gaul, built a bridge across the Rhine, and even invaded Britain. He became a hero to the people, but a threat to the Senate. When the Senate ordered him to disband his army and return to Rome, Caesar faced a choice: obey and risk exile or death, or defy and plunge Rome into civil war. He chose defiance. In 49 BCE, he crossed the Rubicon River, uttering the famous words, "Alia jacta est," the die is cast. This was a point of no return. Caesar defeated his rival Pompey, pardoned his enemies, and declared himself dictator for life. He reformed the calendar, granted citizenship to provinces, and reduced the power of the Senate. But to many senators, Caesar was a tyrant in the making. On the Ides of March in 44 BCE, they assassinated him in the Senate House, thinking they were saving the Republic. Instead, they unleashed chaos. After Caesar's death, Rome descended into another civil war. On one side, Mark Antony, Caesar's loyal general. On the other, Octavian, Caesar's young adopted heir. Together with Lepidus, they formed the Second Triumvirate, an alliance that quickly devolved into a hunt for their enemies. They executed thousands, including Cicero, the great orator who defended the Republic. But alliances among the powerful rarely last. Antony allied with Cleopatra of Egypt, while Octavian positioned himself as the guardian of Rome. In 31 BCE, their forces clashed at the Battle of Actium. Octavian's fleet, led by the brilliant general Agrippa, destroyed Antony and Cleopatra's ships. They both committed suicide, and Octavian stood alone at the top of the Roman world. The Republic was dead. Now, what would replace it? Octavian learned from Caesar's mistakes. He knew that Romans hated the word king or dictator, so he crafted a brilliant illusion. He gave the Senate back its power, or at least the appearance of it. In 27 BCE, he announced he was restoring the Republic. The Senate, grateful for peace, granted him the name Augustus, the illustrious one. But Augustus wasn't restoring the Republic, he was reinventing it. Through a series of constitutional reforms, he concentrated power in his own hands. He became princeps, first citizen, a title that sounded humble but held ultimate authority. He controlled the military, the treasury, and the laws. He used propaganda, building monuments and promoting a narrative of peace and prosperity. This was the Principate, a system where the emperor ruled behind the facade of republican institutions. Augustus's reign began the Pax Romana, a period of stability and wealth, but it came at a cost, the loss of political freedom. As the historian Tacitus wrote, little by little the Republic was stripped away. What does Rome's story teach us? First, that democracy is fragile. Rome's fall wasn't just because of ambitious men, it was because of systemic issues, inequality, corruption, and the erosion of norms. The Senate became so obsessed with infighting that it failed to protect the Republic. Second, power corrupts, but it also illuminates. Augustus wasn't a monster. He was a pragmatist who brought stability after decades of war. But in concentrating power, he set a precedent that would lead to later emperors like Caligula and Nero. Finally, there's the illusion of choice. Augustus made people believe they were still free, even as he controlled everything. This is a warning for modern democracies. Authoritarianism doesn't always come with a bang. Sometimes it comes with a whisper. Rome's journey from republic to empire isn't just ancient history, it's a mirror to our own times. How do we balance security and freedom? How do we prevent the concentration of power? How do we protect our institutions from those who would exploit them? The Roman Republic didn't die in a day. It was a slow decay, a series of choices that seemed reasonable at the time, but ultimately led to tyranny. As we reflect on Rome, let us ask ourselves, what are we willing to sacrifice for stability, and what would it take to safeguard our own democracies? Thank you for joining us on this journey through history. Remember, history doesn't repeat itself, but it often rhymes.